Hello, my name is Adam Seaman. I'm going to be taking you through a 10-minute tool today. This is meant to help us navigate the complex times that we're in. I'm in the field of leadership and development. I've been an executive coach and consultant for 25 years. And so I am an instructor with the University of Tulsa Continuing Education for Science and Engineering. So I want to jump right into it and show you a tool that I use. I've developed this tool and it's meant to help move through difficult times. So there are principles behind this tool and why it works. We won't get into that today. We don't have time, but the course that we teach will delve very deeply into these principles and how they apply to communication and leadership and applying your own personal strengths and building teams. So with that, I want to just get into the tool a little bit. So the way this works, this is for anything. This is for a personal project. This is for a relationship. But it always begins by answering this. Section 1, what is your focus, and state why it matters. So just in the last couple of weeks, I'll give you an example of some different focuses that people have used. And I've used this tool with my clients and with students of mine. Relationships. So one of my longtime friends is also a professor, and he wanted to apply these techniques to his relationship with his teenage son. Being in quarantine changes the dynamic in relationships. So it was a chance to look at what a healthy adaptation would be in that relationship. A project. So I've been working with some students who are wanting to increase voter participation from their peers. So we can apply the same principles to that focus. Or maybe it's a life transition. A client of mine that owns a chemical engineering firm is looking at several of their key employees that are going to be retiring soon. And he wanted to apply these techniques. So we went through the techniques I'm about to show you for how to honor those people who've given their whole professional careers to this company to help make it successful. So what would be an appropriate retirement that would respect those contributions? So that any of those could be the focus. And once you choose your focus, it could be cleaning out a room, it could be any kind of project. But the next thing you have to do is you have to say why it matters. This is critical. This is your purpose. I don't use the word here, but for any one of these things, why does the relationship with a teenager matter? Why does encouraging young people to positively and constructively participate in the voting process, why does that matter? Why does paying respect to the people who have really helped build an organization and stayed with an organization and contributed to it with all of their different talents and time and so forth and hard work? So why does it matter that we effectively honor them? And that, I mean, I won't show you the notes on all of those, but you can imagine that conversation can get to some really powerful things. Now, if when you do this, and we'll jump to the next step in a minute, but before we leave, if when you do this, you realize, you know what, it doesn't really matter. If you have a hard time really answering that question, why does it matter? Then maybe you shouldn't do it. And that is a success right there. So to be able to do that. So, but by talking through and maybe looking at like 2 or 3, 4 bullet points for why does this matter? Why does my focus matter? All right. So hopefully you have a focus you're thinking about. You've been thinking about why it matters, and you can do it more formally later. The next step is to really define what thriving looks like. So we're going to move from selecting our focus and why it matters. And you could do this in just a matter of minutes. You could do it with a group of people and just do it very quickly. Then you jump over here and you say, all right, why does it, we know why it matters. What does thriving look like? And you could use different words. I use thriving, and there's a reason why. You may not like that word. It's totally fine. I don't care. It's what it stands for, that thriving is a state of growth. It's a state of success. Meeting milestones would be another way to say success. It's a state of greater well-being, greater health, whatever it is, health of a business, health of a relationship, health of a project. It's about winning, success and winning, and excellence, just excellence for the sake of excellence. What does it look like to be at the top of whatever this thing it is the top? What would it look like for this relationship to be excellent, or this project, or this transition, or what team meeting? This is great to use. You could plan your meetings this way. I use it all the time. So you would then just define that. What would growth look like? What would it look like to move forward? What would some successes look like? And you could think about that. You might right now be applying it to your department, or to your own personal business, or to a relationship or a project or something you have going on. So by defining thriving, though, what it does is it tells us what our outcomes are. What outcomes do we want to achieve? We don't want to achieve poor outcomes or suffering outcomes. We want to achieve thriving outcomes. So starting with that, by defining what thriving looks like, is how you identify what it is you want. There's a rule I follow when it comes to thriving, and it's this: if I know what someone cares about, then I know what they want for that thing they care about. They want thriving. For anything you care about, what do you want for it? You want thriving. You want growth, success, well-being, winning, excellence, or maybe there's other terms that you like for it. Fine, I don't care what words you use, but I want you to define for your focus what it looks like in the future when you've realized success. You could talk about quantifiable, measurable things, or qualitative things, things that are a little more, not so easy to measure, but they give you a certain sense of a mood, or any other signs that tell you that you're moving in the right direction that may not be easy to measure. So when you do parts 1 and 2 effectively, then you're ready for part 3. And part 3 is where almost everybody starts. Every group I've ever been part of, their first impulse is to get into the methods, the how we're going to do something. They never talked about why. They never talked about what outcomes. And if you have more than one person in the room, you could bet there's going to be different whys and different destinations, different definitions for what thriving looks like. So why not get that out of the way up front? Because the reason we do that, the reason we want to make sure that we have the right methods, is if we're putting all of our efforts into the wrong methods, then we've been wasting our resources. So in a large degree, what I'm showing you is the way to leverage the resources you have: your time, your talent, your focus, mental energy, money, of course, and other resources. So now that you picked your focus and you know why it matters, and you've defined what thriving looks like, and you take a few minutes to do it, now we're ready to say, all right, what are the factors that are necessary? If I want my vision of thriving to arrive, what are the factors necessary? So I don't know, I kind of made some up ahead of time that were more for just general things, but because I see it come up a lot. Like, a factor for achieving any vision for success, whether for a relationship or a project, is that there's the right planning that's done, that we think through things ahead of time. We think about the obstacles, we think about the opportunities, so forth. Oftentimes, especially nowadays, that technology plays a key role. So that's very important. And we often bring this up and we're vague about what it means. And in one of our courses, we delve more deeply that communication, its purpose is to create greater alignment. And if it doesn't create greater alignment, then it wasn't communication. If it created greater contrast or greater discord, then it wasn't communication that you did, it was something else. So when we teach our course in communication, we talk about communication produces greater alignment. But we could delve more deeply into these factors. We can even say, all right, when we use technology, or let's say communication, we want to have the right social media for it. We want to have the right, I'm not going to write it in here, but social media. We want to be clear on what our message points are. So we're going to articulate what our message is. So you could break these down even into more details, each one of these. And you can even go a step further. If you were to say, okay, we're going to use social media, then you could break it down into the different channels of your social media that you would use. So it really can get detailed here. But the point is that what you want to do is identify the factors necessary for thriving to occur. And if you do that appropriately, then what happens is, if you've identified the right factors, then we know success is entirely within our reach if we've identified the right factors. And here, I'll show you why that is. Let's say that this planning could be on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being no planning whatsoever, and 10 being very detailed, very clear, very well thought out, a meticulous plan. I would just simply ask myself, if I'm doing this for myself or if I'm with a group, I would ask the group, it's a great conversation. Between 0 and 10, where are we currently? We might say, well, we're at a 4. We're not too bad. We've started it. So we're at a 4. And then I would ask the other question, where do you think our planning needs to be in order to have our vision for thriving? And they might say, well, at least an 8. So if they say at least an 8, then that now tells me the steps we need to move through in order to get there and get this into shape. So I'm going to want to put some resources into our planning. And then I would have the same conversation around technology. Do we have the right technology? Are we using the technology effectively? Scale of 0 to 10, where are we now? Where do we need to be? And then what are the steps to move there? And communication. And then you could even get down to the smaller wheels. And the reason I draw these smaller wheels is because they're what turn the bigger wheels, if you think about it. And in fact, when we go into our tools for leadership and so forth, a deeper class dive, these are what we would know as strategies. These are your strategies. These are your tactics. The tactics are what you need to fulfill the strategy. As you turn these wheels, you would be moving from a, whatever you were, from a 3 to a 10. If you've labeled these factors correctly, if you've labeled these subparts of communication effectively, and you turn these dials themselves from 0 to 10, then as you turn these dials, then you also turn these dials. And this is how we take thriving from being some random thing to actually being something that is well within our means. Because what do we do once we identify the factors? Then we know exactly where to put our resources. Until we do this in this order, then we're really taking some pretty random guesses as to where to put our resources. This is an approach to really heighten effectiveness and performance. And the last part, I'll stop on this, and there's so much more to say about it, is that if you want to turn these dials, these factors, in order to get your results for thriving so that you can fulfill your purpose and reach satisfactory results on your focus, then it really matters how you yourself are engaged. That word engagement means, the word gauge itself means pledge. What are you pledging to something? And if you aren't pledging the right things, then it won't get there. You see it with your team members, your teammates, or if you have employees that report to you. If they're not engaged in the right way, then the results then they're not going to have what it takes to really make progress on these necessary factors, and they're not really being an effective resource. So how we engage matters, and we often talk about other people's engagement, but for right now, I want to talk about your own engagement. And so that's where we get in here with these 5 factors, or I'm sorry, these are just some of the things to think about that might affect your engagement. So these 5 descriptors are what it is for me. Let's say that as I look at this particular project, I'm like, well, I need to be diligent, I need to be optimistic, I need to be purposeful, determined, cooperative. That if I am those things, that's how I need to be, and that would allow me to make the progress necessary on these factors. That's a great exercise right there, and a great discussion to have with team members or with employees. And then you can, from there, ask yourself, okay, if that's the way I need to engage, then what is it that would move me toward that? What would move my engagement toward being diligent, optimistic? And I might think about some things, and I might say, well, being well rested, having clarity, getting something that's frustrating off of my chest. All of these things might help me engage. Or we use a tool in this program through the University of Tulsa, the Strengths Finder. And so we show people how to use that tool, because one of the things the Strengths Finder indicates, or other similar assessments, they tell us what engages us. And if we know what engages us, then we can really harness that to really make forward momentum. So I'm probably over time. I want to leave it there. This is just a great tool, the Healthy Adaptation to Your Current Environment worksheet. We'll make this available on the website. We just wanted to share some thoughts in these changing times. And if you have questions or want to talk about it further, please reach out. Thanks.